Yes. I'm Naela Sarras. I am the Vice President of Stakeholder Engagement for the North America region. So my job is to look after North America. We don't like that? Okay. Well, this is the NASIG. And in that capacity, my team, the Global Stakeholder Engagement Team, really our job is to work with stakeholders around the world, to engage with them on all kinds of policy and engagement issues that happen within the ICANN realm. And I'm very honored and happy to be here today for today's panel, which is titled Women Pioneers and Inclusion, is the title of today's panel. I will quickly go through the list of panelists that we have today, but I'm also going to have them also, give a little bit of introduction about themselves. And this panel was kind enough to let me just come up with questions. So they don't have slides, which we don't have to have that challenge. I'll ask them questions and ask them to answer. So on today's panel, we have, the first one is Tripti Sinha, right here in the middle. And I'll read from the introduction that is well documented on the NASIG page. So I'll just quickly give a highlight, but please go there because those introductions are well documented there. Tripti is the Assistant Vice President and Chief Technology Officer at the University of Maryland in the Division of Information Technology. She leads Advanced Cyber Infrastructure and Internet Global Services, ACIGS, and the Mid-Atlantic Crossroads, MAX. She has over 3 decades of progressive experience in internet cyber infrastructure technologies, and so that's her role, but I'm also here. We're also hosting her here as the chair of the ICANN Board of Directors, and has previously served as co-chair of ICANN's Root Server System Advisory Committee, RSAC. Tripti has also served on several other boards that are mentioned on the webpage if you go look up the bios of our panelists today. Next, we have Kathy Kleiman. Kathy is an author, lawyer, programmer, data security auditor, and professor who discovered the ENIAC programmers while studying at Harvard. Her passion for their story led her to an award-winning documentary called The Computers, and the book called Proving Ground, which we saw was outside earlier today. After college, Kathy worked in data centers, attended Boston University School of Law, and co-founded her firm's Internet Law and Policy Group. She later became part of the group that founded ICANN, the organization that I work for. Kathy also co-founded ICANN's non-commercial user constituency, or we refer to as the NCUC, right? And founded one of the first internet law practices. And she served on several other organizations. Also, that's documented in the ICANN on the NASIG page. And last but not least, Marita was introduced in the last panel. I'll just quickly say Marita is somebody I work very closely with in her NARALO capacity, North America Regional At-Large Organization. She's also been on the board of CIRA, the organization that looks after .ca. She's also been part of ALAC, the At-Large Advisory Committee of ICANN, and she's very, very active in internet governance that I work with Marita on. So that's a quick introduction of our panelists. And as I said, all the panelists were kind enough to let me come up with questions, so I'll just go through my questions. And some questions will be directed to the whole panel, and some will be only directed to specific panelists, because we don't have time to have them answer all the questions. But I'm hoping we have time afterwards during the reception to ask more questions of the panelists. So question number 1, very simple. Please tell us a little about yourself, what drew you to your line of work, and what keeps you engaged in it. We'll start from the right. Kathy, go ahead, please.
Is this on? Yes, it is. Terrific. I started in this area when I was the age of many of the people in this room. And I took a lot of computer science, and I got very interested in networking and bringing things together. That was when the internet was still an educational and research tool. It connected colleges and universities mostly. And commercial traffic was not allowed on, which I know sounds like it was a long time ago, but really it wasn't. And so I was fascinated by this network. And I thought, there are going to be legal issues there. And I went to law school and came out, and of course there were fascinating legal issues, but I went into telecommunications. So everything you heard on the last panel is what I spent my first 10 years in law doing, was working in front of the U.S. Federal Communications Commission on licensing radio and television and satellite and microwave, and all sorts of fascinating things, the way we get communications around. But then this internet thing popped up, and there were domain name questions, and early domain name disputes came to my desk, and I said, this is where the action will be. And as you said, we founded an internet law and policy group in my law firm. I also went to work for .org, came back to my law firm, continued that work, and then I decided we needed a lot more leaders in the world like you, and I went to law school, this time as a professor. And so I teach internet technology and governance and intellectual property, and try to inspire more people to come into internet and technology policy like you, because we need you.
Thank you. Tripti.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So first, Naela, thank you very much for having me, for inviting me to this event. I appreciate it. So how did I get into this field? Much like Kathy, I started off studying computer science. That was my area of focus, and I was always very strong in the science and math fields, and I initially thought I was going to be a math major, and then physics, and then I ended up with computer science. And believe it or not, this was a long time ago, 30 years ago, my focus was going to be artificial intelligence, which we're hearing so much about today, and neural networks. And so I actually worked for an artificial intelligence and neural networks-based company, but 30 years ago, the processors were not where they are today. So, we programmed at Lisp and so forth. But anyway, one thing led to another. I ended up at the University of Maryland. I was a software engineer by training, and then got into networking eventually. So systems, and as I've told the story before, I started at the bottom of the stack, and then moved up the stack in management, bottom of the technology stack, that is. So as I moved, I started as a developer, and then moved down the stack into networking, and then moved up the stack in management, is how I put it. So essentially, I worked the entire stack, and then came into networking. And at the University of Maryland, we run one of the DNS root servers, and that's how I came into ICANN, if you want to know how I ended up here. But what I do in my day job is I run a very advanced cyber infrastructure for the Washington metro region, and actually Grace was here earlier talking about the NTIA broadband initiative that directly speaks to one of my core areas that I work in my day job. So essentially what my focus is on offering advanced technologies to accelerate science. And we also have a research arm where we do research. And my current research focus is on quantum networking and quantum technologies. And my third focus is ICANN and governance and policy making, because with any new enabling technology, you have an infrastructure of policy that's required. How do you govern it? And that's how I got into this field. So,
thank you, Tripti. And over to you, Marita.
Okay, Naela, if this is a field, I've never been paid a nickel for working in it. When I was working in libraries, and the first time I ever saw any digital download thing, it was through something called an acoustic coupler. Does anybody ever seen one of those? All right. Yeah, it was a telephone. You stuck it on a thing that had a couple of earmuffs, and you dialed the right numbers, and your research was downloaded on paper. Okay. But then I really got involved very deeply in this in 1994 when the internet started to become public and the free nets started to evolve. I had read Howard Rheingold's Virtual Reality, and I thought, oh, that's where all the interesting people are. So I started working with that. That was also like a big volunteer thing where people worked very hard to build up the free nets in the early days, and people were dying to get online, even though there was nothing there, hardly anything there, but it was just so exciting. Thing about it is there's a lot of passion involved in getting when you get involved in a new technology that's really disruptive, and you know it's going to change everything, and you want to be there at the beginning because you might just have a little window to have a little voice in how that evolves. And that's why I am still involved, but that's why it was originally.
Thank you. Okay, so in this today's the entire theme of the session here at NASIG is inclusion and accessibility, and this is why we're talking to you women as leaders in your fields and ones that have had to deal with inclusion issues and accessibility and advocating for yourselves. So as a leader in your field, I guess my question is, what challenges have you had getting into this? And really knowing you, it's probably a challenge that you turned into an opportunity. But can you share with us challenges that you've had or barriers that you've had in this, working in this area, in this field? Start with you again, Kathy.
Sure. Challenges in the field. Well, the first one was when I started going into upper-level computer science classes, and there was only one woman in the room, one other woman, and sometimes I was the only woman in the room, and I see heads nodding. And I'm amazed and shocked and saddened that that is still the case. It shouldn't be, but it is. And so that was the first thing. And I think we're going to have later questions where I talk about the women I met who changed, but we should wait on that, right?
Let's do that.
Let's do it now?
Let's
do it later.
Sorry.
And then it,
Yep, that's good.
I don't know, I think that's it. Go ahead.
So unlike Kathy, I, believe it or not, went to an all-women's college. And and almost my entire middle school and high school was all women's. So the classroom belonged to me. I was surrounded by women. However, I had exactly the same experience Kathy had when I went to graduate school at Maryland. And I walk into the classroom and I'm the only woman. And I was like, wait a minute, something feels wrong here. You know, what's wrong with this picture? And to add insult to injury, professor walks in, looks at his roster, looks around the room, looks at me again, and says, "Are you in the right class?"
Ouch.
And I asked him if he could read off the roster, and I said, "That's me. I'm in the right class." But anyway, it's incidences like that. And 30 years ago, well, there were computer science majors because I went to Smith College in Massachusetts. But there's still a problem today. There just aren't enough women in this field, and we've got to change that. So sadly, there was a big push 30 years ago. There still needs to be a push. That hasn't changed that much.
Marita.
And in my case, I'm going to bring in the fact that, as a working mother with a job and trying to do a whole bunch of stuff off the side of my desk, it was always a time issue. And, as women always taking on all the jobs and doing the great multitasking stuff that we do, you do get pretty exhausted and stressed out by the lack of time to do the things that you really feel you want to do.
Totally agree. And always feeling like you're not giving everything your 150%. And when it's your family, that's really terrible, the guilt. But Tripti, you led me into my next question, which I'm going to direct to you, which is about change in organizations. Because you're right, things have not changed very quickly, not much. And I bring this up because change in organizations, it's easy for us as women to be told, well, advocate for yourself, negotiate for yourself. Don't take a job that, isn't what you think is your worth. And that's all good and well, right? That's good advice. But I think there is a responsibility that's directly on organizations to also make the change. Changes are going to happen if organizations make them happen. So don't put the problem back on us, right? We'll advocate for it ourselves. So with that change, I want to jump into some of the statistics that as I was preparing these questions and some of the numbers I found. And I apologize, these numbers apply to US markets only. So I didn't have time to research everybody. But the numbers are pretty appalling. Really, in terms of, for example, as women in organizations first promoted into that first step of being managers, only 86% of those women make it to that first step of managers. And then the number is even lower for women in the tech field. And so that first step of going to manager, if less women are going up, then the pipeline only shrinks even more and more as you go up that stack, that managerial stack, not the data stack. So then it's very obvious why at the top you have very little women to promote from, right? Because the pipeline has been empty from the beginning. So how do we get around that? How do we start making changes in organizations to make sure that women are promoted and are given that opportunity that others are afforded, so that the pipeline is fuller as you get higher in the managerial stack?
So thank you for the question, and that is indeed a problem. So just to let you know, in my day job, I was just filled up an empty position, a senior position, and I was very anxious to hire a woman, and all the applicants were men, and we tried. The first search failed, tried the second search. In the end, I hired a very qualified man. The problem is the dearth of women in the field. There really is. And how do we overcome that problem? So I think it really starts with early childhood, to be honest with you. I think you have to go down to early, kindergarten, elementary school, middle school. Girls need to be encouraged to study, the sciences and math. I was encouraged from childhood. I come from an academic family, so I had no such barriers. Yeah. But when I run into other women in fields, I hear stories, and I've been on National Science Foundation, meetings where women have shared their stories of, middle school incidences that were discouraging women from going into these fields. So I think we really need to start there. That's where it really starts. And you create an even playing field, and and then open up opportunities. But we are where we are. How do we promote when you're once in the workforce? So there are a couple of things that are at play. I've noticed that men, because you've dominated the workforce for centuries now, have developed a very strong network. And men are very supportive of each other. You compete for positions, but you also support each other. Women are still we're a few decades behind in doing that. Yeah. So I think we have to work very hard to get where we are, and then you tend to not support other women. I've seen that a lot, and that has to change. We have to now support each other and promote each other. And so that's one aspect of it. There's another, which is you have to be very, very conscious in how you look for women. For example, as you all know, we're looking for the next ICANN CEO. So when I constructed the search committee, if you've looked at it, it's 50% women. And that was something that was very important to me. Because when you bring candidates in, when the candidate interviews, he and she wants to see someone who looks like them, right? And I've been on many, many interviews where it's mostly men. I walk into rooms where it's mostly men. So it becomes a more calming environment for an individual to interview. If it's a man and he sees 50% of the committee's men, it makes it much easier, right? So that's one thing. And then you make a conscious effort to go out there and dig deeper and bring women into the fold. So there's just many things, many cylinders you need to fire on to make it, more equitable.
Absolutely, yes. And I want to say I had the privilege of working with Tripti when she was the co-chair of the Root Server System Advisory Committee. And sadly, it is no joke that there were many times I was the liaison from ICANN IANA department to RSAC. And there were many times that I attended meetings of RSAC, and Tripti was literally the only woman in there on that committee. And sadly, it hasn't changed much, but I think it's becoming very, very obvious that, yeah, that things need to change. Great, thank you. So then that leads us to our next question, which is directed at Kathy. Kathy, who worked on something called the ENIAC project, ENIAC, right? Is that how you refer to it? So your project on the ENIAC project showed that women have been there all along. It's not new that women, are now coming into the workforce, that we were, doing other things are now coming in. We've been there for years, for decades. But we weren't getting the attention the recognition that we need to. So first, I'd like you to please tell us a little bit about the ENIAC project so the audience is aware of it. And then a little bit of advice on how we, as women, make change in organizations to make sure that we're included, we're part of the decisions, we're part of the structure of an organization that makes an organization tick. Is that not working? Absolutely.
Okay, great. It's a good question, and it just so happens because we had books outside, I brought posters. So I can tell the story with some pictures, which is when I took my computer science class, I wanted to know if there were women in computing, especially when I kept walking into the upper level rooms, like my Lisp course and C course, and there were almost no one. So of course we know about Ada Lovelace and Grace Hopper, but that's it. One woman in the 19th century, one woman in the 20th century. That's one woman a century. I mean, that's continuing the old story. I found these pictures of ENIAC, the Electronic Numerical Integrator and Computer, the world's first all-electronic, general-purpose, programmable computer. Who's heard about it here, the ENIAC, right? We study it in computer history. 8 feet tall, 80 feet long, black, steel. We know about Bletchley Park now, which we didn't know about for 50 years because it was secret, and breaking, that's in the UK, and they broke the Enigma code, the German code, with the Colossus machine and Alan Turing. Who saw The Imitation Game? Great, lots of people here. So Keira Knightley, I just want you to know, she represents 4,000 to 6,000 women that were at Bletchley Park, all reduced to Keira Knightley. She's brilliant, but I think there should have been a few more women in that film. This was the secret U.S. Army project in Philadelphia. And so when I found these pictures, I was like, there seem to be women in them, right? And the men were in the captions and the women weren't. I'm like, okay. And I was kind of told the women were models. So I went looking further. This is also a picture of ENIAC. We've got 2 women very, very clearly in the pictures. And I'd like to introduce you to Jean Jennings Bardick and Fran Belis Spence, 2 of the original 6 ENIAC programmers. All of the original programmers of the ENIAC were young women. All 6 of them were young women recruited by the Army to calculate ballistics trajectories, the path of a shell from the time it leaves the muzzle of a big cannon, a big piece of artillery, until it hits a target. It was a differential calculus equation, and we went all across the country. Jean comes in from a farm in Missouri. Fran was in Philadelphia already, and they all come to Philadelphia, and they are selected from a group of about 100 women who are calculating these trajectories, and to program ENIAC, because that was ENIAC's program. They were the subject matter experts. So why they were dismissed as models for decades and decades is another story. It's written about in book, and I won't talk about it too much. But I got to know 4 of the original 6 ENIAC programmers. They were my role models. So that's why I love, I'm not pushing the book. There are just 6 wonderful pictures of these women, and 4 of the 6 talked to me. They were in their 80s, and they said, of course women belong in the field. Of course you belong, so stay and do. And when I called them, when we were founding ICANN, when we were holding the first ICANN meetings, I'd walk in the room and it was mostly men. We're not bashing you guys, we like you. I mean, you've always been nice and wonderful and warm, but still, you look to the left and you look to the right, and they're like, especially Jean, again, from the farm in Missouri, she'd be like, give them hell, Kathy. Just go in, do what you have to do. And so I had these mentors, you've got these mentors and role models. How do we change things? We do it together. It's not just, as you said, it's not just a woman's job, it's a man's job too. I was just at the Computer History Museum talking about this story, and the last question was from a young man who said, how do we improve the workforce so that women feel more welcome? And I'm like, that is the question. And everyone probably has a different answer to it. But the key is, I mean, I've worked with so many of the men in this room as well as the women. The key is to make everyone feel as warm and comfortable and argue equally with everybody. Right, Jonathan? We've argued for years. And then gone out and had a drink. So make everyone in the room feel comfortable. Introduce yourself to the strangers, and absolutely go and promote everyone you can, and promote not just women, people of color are facing even more discrimination in the tech field. So go look harder than just what's on the top of the stack. Thanks.
Thank you. Excellent. Go ahead, please, Tripti.
If I could just add one thing to what Kathy said. So the reason I got where I got to in the end is because men promoted me. So men played a strong role, and don't give up on the humanity of individuals, because eventually when you stay the course, when you present your skill set, your capabilities, people recognize it. They do, and no matter what your gender. So yes, they do. And you can argue that, well, men were there, who else was there but men in the room, right? So I got promoted. But regardless, I have met some amazing men who are very, very supportive of women. So people do recognize that. So don't give up on that faith and that hope.
Thank you. It's really well said.
And I'd just like to say that, I mean, we don't usually think about this as a collective responsibility in the public policy area. It's not just about men and women, it's because the system has become calcified in many ways, and it's really hard to break out of a calcified system. When I was working and making decisions in a support role and supervising people, there really wasn't any way to break through that until there was a government affirmative action program that made every organization do an audit on its staff and find out what these people did. And everybody got points on what they did. Well, that's how I broke the glass ceiling. It wasn't because it was a male decision. It was because there was a public policy that said, we have to fix this. We know this is happening. We have to fix it. So sometimes it happens that way, too. I know it's unusual. It's Canada. Sometimes we get socialist government. That's what happened.
Whatever it takes. No, and I'm really actually... as someone, I'm originally Palestinian. This is not something to take for granted that governments do make those conscious decisions, right? I mean, there are governments where that's not necessarily a priority in their agenda, so something very appreciated for sure. Okay, I'll keep going with my questions, but I promise there will be quite a time for questions from you guys at the end that I will make sure we keep time for. Tripti, back to you, because I think you mentioned a little bit about going up the managerial stack is how you refer to it. And so I want to go talk a little bit about breaking what we refer to as the glass ceiling. But not just the glass ceiling through corporations. I think around the world there's many glass ceilings that we all have to face, especially as you mentioned minority women. In parts of the world, women still have difficulty getting access to finance, to loans, to lodge their businesses. Other places, including myself, women still have issues with inheritance, rights to inheritance from their families. You've certainly one that broke a lot of those glass ceilings. You've gone up the managerial stack in your organization, and you've served on many boards as chair of the board. And other organizations. What advice do you have for us in terms of how to get to that level? And as women find themselves being challenged by this, what words of wisdom can you offer to that issue?
So I don't know if this is a stroke of luck or happenstance, but I picked a field that I really truly like. So first, whatever you pursue in life, make sure you have a passion for it, and be authentic. And I'm an extremely hardworking person, and work hard, and stay the course. And I always say this: you're going to have bumps and bruises along the way, but don't let that hold you back. And just keep at it, and have a lot of faith in people around you, because people do ultimately recognize capabilities when they see it, and help others along the way. Yeah. And there's one thing that my father taught me, my late father, which is, he said, if you fail at something, throw that behind you. Don't think about it, because that failures oftentimes will hold you back. If you're successful, put that behind you as well, because that too could hold you back. It could go to your head, and you could kind of relax on your laurels, So whatever happened yesterday happened. Learn from it. Enjoy the moment if it's a good one. Move on to your next challenge. So just focus on what comes next, and just stay the course, and be ready. You're going to have difficult moments ahead of you. Everyone does. And that really is, there's no other secret to it. That's just the way I broke the ceiling. You just keep at it and build relationships along the way. Yeah.
Maybe I can also ask a follow-up to that. Are you encouraged by what you're seeing? Do you think there's enough change and advancement of women that's happening? Do you think our organizations are getting there? Are you hopeful?
Well, and it's funny, Vint and I were talking recently, and he said the age of the matriarchs, because with Doreen at the helm of the ITU, and you've got me as chair of ICANN board, and Sally as interim CEO, it's nice to see so many women. So I think it is changing, yes. The more women faces that you see will bring about change.
Yeah. Go ahead, Marita.
When I ran for the CIRA board, the Canadian Internet Registration Authority, the .ca domain name people, one of my platforms was there have to be more women on this board. That was 2013. Now there are already more than half of the board is women. So that is really changing. It changed very quickly because it became a policy thing. People became aware of it. And people who were in a position to, like in my case, elect, they agreed there had to be more women, and now they're working towards getting more minorities on the board. I mean, it's a process. It's happening, not instant, but happening.
No, that's good, Marita, because that feeds into the question I wanted to ask you specifically is, are you encouraged by what you're seeing in the internet governance area that we both work in? Are you encouraged by what you're seeing?
With respect to women, or?
Well, I'm sorry, yeah, with respect to women and inclusion of women, yes.
Yeah, there are a lot of women involved in the multi-government, in the multi-stakeholder system here, and I think that's wonderful. You see, like we've been saying many years ago, you didn't see that much, and so, yeah, what I was really encouraged by was it's actually a policy. There has to be diversity, gender diversity. And all the other kinds of diversities have to be reflected. Well, you didn't used to see that sort of thing, and it's right there, and working towards it, yes, it is encouraging.
Yeah. I was working on putting a panel for ICANN's 77 meeting next week, and we were naming people that we wanted on the panel, and one of the organizers jumped up and said, "This is a panel, this is not a panel, so come on, let's work on a little bit on diversity." And I was really, it was really nice to see, and a good reminder that it's no longer you have to put other considerations, right? It's no longer just the best man for the job. I mean, we are always focusing on the best panelists, but we do have it's no longer just same old is not going to work anymore, thankfully. Kathy, Tripti took us down the STEM road: science, technology, engineering, math fields. And I want to talk a little bit about that, because I think you're in that space. And sadly, we're still seeing few women going into STEM jobs clusters. So for example, according to the numbers I was looking at, in engineering, women's shares have inched up only slightly from 12% in 1990 to 15% today. And the share of women in computer occupations went down during this period. In 1990, 32% of workers in computer occupations were women. Today, it's only 25%. And that percentage hasn't changed since 2016. What do you think should be done to encourage more women to go into these fields? And what resources can women turn to for guidance to help them to achieve success in this field, in STEM fields?
Great. You've got the statistics, and they sound difficult. I'm gonna raise some good news. So with the book, I've been all over the United States, and I look forward to hearing what's happening in your countries on this. But I've been all over the United States, and the STEM program is strong. We're working hard at every level, whether it's kindergarten through 6th grade, 7th grade, which is the beginning of our middle school, junior high school, 7th grade to 8th and 9th grade, and then into high school and into college. And I'm working on graduate programs, making sure kids come into the PhD and law programs so that we have graduate women and people of color working on tech and internet policy, as we were talking about. There's just amazing efforts. There's an enormous amount of money. That's been a theme throughout today, is that where there's money, where there's incentives, where there's money for people with good ideas, there are great projects. There are lots of projects for people with really good ideas to share them. So I was at a STEM teachers fair in Massachusetts, and it was teachers sharing ideas with each other of programs that really excited their kids in their students in different areas of STEM. I went to the Computer Science Teachers Association regional meeting in one part of the country and talked to the teachers and gave them the history, which they will now put into their classrooms as well. They thought it was very inspirational, and that their students would be inspirational. We have to find more ways to share programs. We have something called CS for All and NCWIT, the National Council for Women in Technology, but we just need much more involvement. And as Tripti said, we have to start early. Yeah. And frankly, I think it's starting with games. I got to raise 2 children while doing all this crazy work. And we tried to make science and technology fun. And we tried to make it as interesting as possible. But my daughter came home in middle school and said, "Mom, I can't do math or computer science." And I'm like, where did she get that? This is somebody who met the ENIAC programmers. Oh. And it's coming in from peers. It's coming in from the media. A lot of money's been spent to try to figure out what went wrong. But our answer was interesting. A few weeks later, she asked for a new computer. I'm like, "What do you need that for?" She's like, "Games." I'm like, And I thought about it, and I'm like, "You can have a new computer if you build it." And her stepfather, who should raise his hand, Mark Massey, and my daughter built a computer together. And I never again heard a problem about I can't do computer science. I heard Mom hasn't built a computer yet.
Mom, get to it. That's wonderful. That's really great. All right, I'm conscious of time, so I want to go to one more question. Tripti, this is our theme here is inclusion as DASIG. So, and I think you've touched on this a little bit before about women and helping other women and being good mentors of other women. And the data shows and the research that we look at says that women do take the time to be more mentoring and helping of other women in the workplace and taking them on as trainees and answer questions from fellow women because they're interested in seeing them advance. But at the same time, sometimes that hinders women advancement themselves, because now they're taking time out of their busy, away from work to help others and be kind. How do you deal with that in the organization to make sure that women continue to give, women and men continue to give time and effort to DEI without it being looked at as, here comes Tripti with her DEI agenda, that it's taking time away from actual work, or the perception that it's taking time away from actual work?
I don't know any other way to do it, I'll be honest. We just have to set aside the time and make an effort to do it. And just to add to a very good point that Kathy just made, and to expand on a little bit about stereotypes. We need to change the way society looks at women. For example, I'll tell you what really irritates me is when I watch TV commercials. And when it's laundry detergent or soap, who's showcasing it? A woman. It's always a woman, right? We've got to change that. Little girls are watching television, and that's what they see in their future, right?
Yes.
Why don't we, as you know, I'm of Indian descent, and I always joke about how you watch these sitcoms, and who's the doctor? It's always the nerdy Indian doctor, right? It's the way we portray people. We're always stereotyping people. Yeah. Let's break out of that model, right? So that's one thing I just wanted to comment on. But I'm not sure what other way to do it. You have to set aside time. Yeah. And the irony is right now I'm the diversity officer for my unit at the university. But I make time to do it. Yeah. And I just don't know what else you could do. Yeah, you might get labeled as someone who's taking time away, but how else would you do it? And you have to integrate it into your workplace.
Fair enough. And I can say, sorry, go ahead, Kathy. You want to add to that? And Marita, you want? Yeah. That was, yeah. Did you want to add anything to it, Kathy? No. Totally agree with you, Tripti. And I have to say, I've been one of those people that were on the, that took advantage of the fact that Tripti was always willing to share her professional experience and her opinions, and really I've never seen her not give us time when we needed it. So definitely somebody who practices what she says. This audience has been very active with questions, so I'm going to give each one of you about 1.5 minutes to give us advice to other women on how to make sure that what advice would you give to other women to make sure that inclusion is a priority for them, for their organizations, what things that they should be working on to make change to make the future better for us and for generations to come. So I'll give each one of you about a minute to answer that, and then I'm going to go to the audience. Marita, let's start with you.
I'm not into really, I don't know.
Microphone.
Oops. It depends on the context that you're in. You have to find the places in the context you're in that you can do that. It's kind of giving advice is really, I can't give specific advice on that. Everybody can find a place where they can help with these kind of things. As I said, when I ran for the board of directors, that was one of my platforms. So that was one place where, I could do something, but, that kind of opportunity doesn't arise very often. So whatever you can do in your place. That's what I'd say.
So what advice would I give to women?
Yes.
And the advice I give is work hard, stay the course, support each other, and don't treat men any differently either. That's another piece of advice I'd like to give is they're not necessarily, men are not necessarily evil or bad or anything. It's just the way the world evolved is where we are. And to undo that or make it evolve further, you just need to put in the extra effort to integrate women into the workforce, be supportive, hold the door open for others, Yeah. Those are my words of what.
Thank you.
Okay.
Kathy.
And I'll be brief as well, because I feel a lot of questions in the room. And not questions, also statements and experiences that other people want to share. So both to women and to men, very, very similar. Walk into the room, know that you belong there. Know that there's a history of all of us in computer science, whether you've been taught it or not. We're all there. The pictures don't lie. We were all there. The first teams were women and men. My next book will be telling the story of Univac, the first commercial computer that launched the commercial computer industry. There were African American engineers, women engineers, Jewish engineers. It was a time of racism, sexism, anti-Semitism in the United States in the 1950s, and yet all these amazing people came together. So you belong in the room, know you belong in the room, walk into it like you have every right to be there. Do yourself a favor and help others. Listen for the quiet voices in the room. It's not just women. It's often people from other cultures, people who are speaking English as a second, third, or fifth language. Yeah. Help them communicate, and they will return the favor. You will be building your networks, because there are a lot of people in these rooms. We're international, and they all want to speak, but sometimes they need an invitation, and sometimes in their cultures they need an invitation. So call on them, even if they're the quiet people in the room. I just did that with a student, PhD student from China, and it turns out if I called on him in my class, he was ready to answer, but he wouldn't raise his hand. Do your research. Do your research again. Do it 3 times, do it 4 times, because if you feel, it will make you feel better when you walk in the room, and it will make you sound like the expert that you are. And and I was going to say, if you want to vet something, if you want to check out, sometimes you want to check out your ideas in new areas. New ideas are a little hard. You may put together a team of people who have different views than you do and run it by them and practice. And also practice public speaking. That's one of the best skills I know in this area. Being able to say something in 2 or 3 minutes, which I might not have done here, is a really good skill. So thanks.
Thank you very much. Really excellent advice from everyone. Thank you, panel. It's been great. I know this audience has a lot of comments probably to make, questions, so we'll go to the audience, and you're helping us with the mic, so thank you. Questions? I see a hand. Let's start from the closest over there with Dr. Cogburn, and then down the circle to the other end, then back here to you.
Thanks, Thomas. You didn't have to start with me.
You're our host. Thank you very much for making this happen.
We're so excited about this. We're just delighted to have everyone here, and the conversation has been just spectacular, and I'm looking forward to tomorrow as well. And Eduardo is on my bad list because he assigned me the task of summarizing these 2 days, and after just one day, I'm not sure I can do it, but I'm going to try, Eduardo. This has been such a great panel. I wasn't going to make this comment, but this has been such a great panel that I feel like I can make this comment, and you've alluded to it as well. So for me, one of the things that I find particularly challenging is that as we focus on all of these wonderful strategies that we've talked about to get women involved, I see so much progress with getting women involved, and where I still see such profound disappointment in lack of participation is amongst people of color, particularly African Americans. So if you look around the room and you see how many women are in the room, you're encouraged, right? Yeah. Look around the room and see how many African Americans are in the room. Think about every room you'll be in next week and how many African Americans are in those rooms. When you go to ICANN, when you go to, not ICANN, IGF, all of those rooms, the number of African Americans is just very, very small, men or women. And to me, I just don't know what additional strategies we need to pursue to address that. So all of the strategies you talked about could be used for African Americans as well. And I know several of you mentioned that, but it's just a real concern of mine as we promote the inclusion and participation strategies, not to forget that very specific group. And there are other specific groups, but that's a very specific group that I would hope that we continue to look for.
Thank you, Derek. Very well said. Anyone wants to comment on this? I mean, that's a very good statement. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would just say that in my lifetime, I've found that affirmative action programs have not been popular among a lot of people, but they have worked. And they particularly focused on women, in the past years, and then I think we need to do more focus as you say, for African Americans, Indigenous people. We're talking about that now. So there's more work to do. We've only done a part of the work, but we're only human, right?
Thanks. We're going to go down that semicircle, and we'll come back and circle back. So over there, yeah. The hand up there, yeah.
Thank you, all the speakers. My name is Tripti. I'm from Nepal, and it's quite interesting to hear women leaders like this. But coming down from Nepal, it is like, when you talk about things, as rightly said by Tripti, the stereotype thinking has been a major problem, especially in Asia Pacific for women. Women are given education, but it's the mentality where they are told that these works are supposed to be done by men and these are not supposed to be done by women. So that is what is hindering it all. And apart from that, when we look at, I've been engaged with APR, IGF, APSIG, things like this, and a lot of the times the women participation is very less, and we try to promote them. But at the end of the day, it is the fact that, women are coming, and I think we have to, from our level, from our societies, from our, backgrounds, we have to treat women, we have to treat our daughters equally, we have to teach them the value of equality. That is what is lacking. That is where, whether you look at all these forums, even the smallest idea of inclusion, representation has a challenge in terms of whether we are going about matrix, whether we are going about, things like these come up, because these are smaller issues where the values are important, where we have to treat people equally. I've worked in a software company, and I hired more women than men. Why? I'll tell you. Men, they go out to take the group, smoke out. They are like that. Women, they are more sincere. That is a reality. Let me tell you, they are more sincere, they focus, they work. They gossip, they do gossip, but it is not like men. Men go out more frequently out for the smoke breaks and stuff like that. So I'm a strong supporter. I have my daughter as well. When she was there, I was like hell scared. Do you know why? I was like hell scared because if there is a son, I could beat him, but with a girl, I cannot. And then when she touched me, I cried like a baby. And I'm proud to say I have a daughter, and I will raise her like my son. She's gonna be my son, and she's gonna, make me proud. I know that. Thank you.
Excellent statement. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to go down here to Jonathan.
Yeah, thank you. I know that in the end it's a human problem, but as an engineer, my first impulse is to dehumanize it, so I apologize in advance. Every system has a built-in bias where you are a framework by which you break ties. And so very often when a bias is built into a system and people are used to a particular bias in this system, the way to correct it is to create the opposite bias to the system. In other words, as you say, I'm going to make this panel of the CEO Selection Committee be half and half, even though it meant that I had to dig much deeper in order to do that. And so what I think ends up happening, a phenomenon I'm seeing in a lot of different areas, is that whoever previously benefited from the bias, even if they believe in fairness, believe that the next version should be perfect. In other words, it should not be absolutely fair, right? And don't create a new bias. It's fear of the pendulum or something like that, I guess is the way I would think about it. And that I feel like that's one of the biggest challenges, is that any time we're trying to make an overt effort to bring things to equal, it requires a form of inequality in the near term to accomplish it. And I think that can create pushback and fear on the part, in this case, men, right? But whichever parties were the beneficiaries beforehand.
Thanks, Jonathan. Well said.
This is why I said, Jonathan, affirmative action was not a popular program. A lot of pushback. Yeah, I know, and reasonably so, understandably, but it worked. It hurts.
Jonathan, I would say that's what's called evolution. You have winners and losers.
Yeah. Ron, you want to give it to Ron? Yeah. And then we go back to you. Go ahead, Ron.
Thanks. I think related to the topic we just talked about prioritization, right? There's always that, I don't know, I'm just trying to project a little bit and imagine you're all very successful. So I want to commend you for that. And there's got to be this temptation sometimes that people look at you and like, you're only successful because you're a woman, right? And I know that's not true, knowing each of you. But how do you internally address that? Like, does somebody really think I'm just here because I'm a woman and I got some special preferential treatment? Or more importantly, women who are maybe earlier in their career and they're struggling with that dynamic of, well, I don't want to just be advanced because I happen to be a woman. I want to be advanced because I'm really good at what I do. Like, how do you manage that dynamic? How have you managed it? And what would you say to other women in the room? How do they manage that going forward?
Please.
Honestly, I don't think about it. I don't. I can't be worried about it. There's so much to do. It'll hold you back. Yeah,
Totally.
that's the way I deal with it.
I don't even understand the question that you're asking. When I started at ICANN, there was a group of technical people, kids in their 20s and 30s in the black T-shirts. And there was a group of older men, intellectual property attorneys, in their blue and black suits and their gold cufflinks. And they were in 2 different rooms. And I was the only one who spoke both languages. And my job was to bang heads together and say, you guys have to talk to each other, particularly talking to the lawyers, much older than me. And generally I was pregnant at the time. And they just looked at me. But, that the lawyers had to talk to the young technologists and understand what was going on, or they wouldn't be able to create policy and law that made any sense. So there's no affirmative action. Thanks.
Totally.
Naela had a question, and you haven't picked it up. It was about something called the imposter syndrome. I've experienced exactly what you said, and also felt like, am I an imposter because I'm a woman? And maybe people think I shouldn't be here. Just have to push through it. That's all. Just push through it. It doesn't matter.
I didn't pick it up because of time, but also honestly, because the more I thought about this is on them. If they think I don't belong, that's their problem. I think we had a question from this gentleman in the,
Hello, my name is Raymond Mamata from Accra, Ghana. I'm part of the team that organized the Ghana School on Internet Governance Fellowship. One challenge that I have noticed for the ladies in participating in the IG program, when I interact with them, is most of them say, I don't have an IT background, so I don't see how I can engage in IG effectively. So fortunately, all of you have IT background, so it supports what they are claiming. What would be your advice to such people who say, I don't have IT background, so I wouldn't be very effective in the IG ecosystem? How will you encourage them to engage?
Okay, sounds like Marita, you want to
I don't have an IT background. So there's a lot of other work to do. You do have to learn the language. You do have to know how to speak to people. You do have to do your homework and learn what's being talked about. But I have found it perfectly possible to work in this particular environment for many years without an IT background. So it can be done. You don't absolutely have to do it.
Thank you. Did you want to add to that, Tripti? No? Okay.
I think I do, actually.
You do? Please, Kathy.
First, encourage them. They can. Everybody's a user now, and there's so much online that they can learn in so many online courses. But also, what we were talking about, raise your daughters and sons to pursue STEM. I found historically, unfortunately, that many of the women in computer science had a parent who was in computing. My father was an electrical engineer. This is not true. For many years, it used to be that lawyers raise lawyers and doctors raise doctors, and now computer scientists and engineers raise computer scientists and engineers. There is so much need now in computing and in medicine and in law. You shouldn't have to have a parent to open the door for you. So we have to open the door and just encourage lots and lots of people to go in so that they have the backgrounds and they have the jobs. There are jobs out there, enormous, and the jobs are growing. And so everyone should be able to fill these. It's a good question.
Yeah, thank you, Kathy. We are running out of time. No, you're okay?
Naela, I'm over here. I just want to make a point, if you
Go
don't
ahead,
mind.
Alfredo. Yeah.
For those of you that don't know me, I'm Alfredo Calderon. For the past 5 or 6 years, with Eduardo Diaz, we were the founders, or are the founders, of the North American School of Internet Governance, and we've managed it. And I just wanted to make the point to Raymond, I don't have an IT background. I'm a chemist. I'm a co-founder of the Virtual School of Internet Governance, and I don't have a background in IG. I'm learning as we go forward, and I'm building these programs specifically because I want people to learn, and I'm learning with you guys. Every session that we have, I'm learning, and I want other people to learn the same way I'm learning together. So let's try, and this is a proposal that I have for all the men here. Let's build a program where we integrate women into the program, like this session. This is teaching and learning by example. So let's do that, okay?
Thank you, Alfredo. Thank you.
If I can just add
We are
one
at-
point to that.
Go ahead.
So we used to talk a lot about pipelines and pipelines into STEM disciplines. And if you think about pipelines, that sort of suggests that you have to be there at the beginning to get into that pipeline in order to come out the other side. But the National Science Foundation and others are now talking about pathways, because now there are multiple ways to get there. And Marita's last comment, you still have to know these things. And Kathy was saying there's so much content that you can learn these things. You can learn how to program. You can learn about the technology. You can learn these things. So you still have to have that knowledge base, but there are now many ways to get there, and not just a pipeline that if you miss it at the beginning, you're out. So.
Very good point. Thank you. Shh. If everyone is okay with staying, I know you guys are all busy. So yeah, please go ahead.
Actually, this is Shah from Dhaka, Bangladesh. I would like to say that the things is going to be changed. Like in Asia, most of I will specifically say that South Asia, the women they are a little bit shy. So still they are feeling hesitation to speak in public places. But the things is day by day changing. For example, in APRIGF, Asia Pacific Regional, we are encouraging women. We are giving fellowship more in 60% women and then 40% male. APC as well, we are trying to follow these rules as well. So what I feel that like last year's in Singapore, we did that both joint program. So from my country, Bangladesh, one of the women selected, but her family members is restricted to go her allow in outside the country. So the family members is in person meeting me that whether it's very safety or something like that. So still in our country or the developing country or the poor countries, the family is thinking about their daughters, however that they could go outside and can be independently move around. That. So I think that if the family supports comes from there, then women could go far away from their position as well, because they are very much talented and they have their capabilities in, and I seen that the women are more dynamic than men as well. So everyone, if this panel have a very great experience and very enthusiastic. Those women have heard, I think they will be very encouraged in their future life. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate. Can I make a quick comment? Sure. Oh, I wanted to call one thing out. First, I appreciate all the questions that have been asked, but thus far they've all been men. Where are my women?
Hi, my name is Nancy Chang. I'm from Seattle. And so I'm going to do a very juicy one based off of what Shah said, was that, you know, why those families don't want their daughters to leave is because they're afraid of their safety. And so I know I'm not in technology. I've been technology adjacent. I worked a lot at the city of Redmond and, you know, just immersed in technology. But I think the issue is there's a lot of violence towards women, and whether it's sexual harassment or seeing women as not as capable. And knuckle dragging and insubordination. And I think that those are big issues to have to ask men to raise, the boys, the whole community needs to raise boys in a way where they're respecting women and not seeing them as a threat, but as part of a team to solve problems. And so I guess my question is, have you experienced that type of violence? And if you haven't or seen it, I guess what can companies be better at doing, or is it a regulatory thing, or is it just calling the cops? But if people don't want to call the cops, then it's just a problem that's going to continue to happen. So I said a lot of things, so respond however you need.
So there was a lot packed in there. So I think there are multiple responses to that. First, what you were saying, there has to be a cultural change. And those are very hard to change, but it needs to happen. And so you have to go deep into the culture, and they have to recognize that, it's time for them to evolve and make it an even playing field and respect women. And as you were also saying, right? And when it comes to violence, there's a cultural component to it. And in the professional world, we address that with policy, right? Anti-harassment policy and so forth. And I would challenge every man in this room to go back and, if you see it, stand up for women and, look at every female you see as your sister, as your mother, as your grandmother. Once you put on that lens, you'll treat women differently as your daughter, right? You wouldn't want your child to be treated that way. So that's you hit the nail on the head. It's a complex, non-trivial problem, and it's worldwide.
Okay. Because Tripti invited women to speak, I'm going to give the last word to Juliana.
Thank you very much. I feel super inspired when I see women like you here, like giving the speech that inspire me, and I guess it inspire other girls. I'm a young woman that works in the internet governance environment, and I feel pleasant because there is kind of gender equality concern in the events as well, like EGF, Internet Governance Forum. They care about gender equality during the panels. I was in an event last week, and they care about it as well. And in the event that I was, we talk about the right of reproduction, the right of our bodies, about abortion online, and I guess we need to discuss these topics because we want to know about our bodies, we want to know about our sexuality, and we want to know our place in companies as well, because I'm a software developer, and I know there is other software developer girls here, and I remember when I was reading the profile of my colleagues here, I was super happy because I saw at least 50% of women there, and people that can be my colleague here and can be a partner in the future, because I really like the idea of having projects about feminism and about the interconnection of men and women working together to have a safe and healthy place and word to us. So I'm happy about it.
Thank you, Juliana. I'm happy you're happy. Thank you. Okay, I think we're really going to end now. We're 10 minutes over time. Apologies to the organizers. But thank you deeply for putting this together, for putting NASIG all together, and then for calling for a specific panel like this to happen during NASIG. Thank you so much. And really a huge thanks to all the panelists. I know they're very busy. I know Kathy spent the whole day with us. I know Tripti is running a whole ICANN meeting. Marita is going to do a lot of ALAC stuff next week and at large. So thank you so much for giving us your time this week. Thank you.